private, not-for-profit organization which derives the preponderance of its membership revenue from private organizations. Florida's Great Northwest was not created by statute, does not act on behalf of any state agency, and is not controlled by any state agency. Florida's Great Northwest does not utilize staff or other business resources of a state agency or local government, and does not make decisions on behalf of any state agency or local government. Accordingly, Florida's Great Northwest does not consider itself an agency as defined by Chapter 119. As such, Florida's Great Northwest is not generally subject to the provisions of Chapter 119, and Florida's Great Northwest check register, with limited exceptions, is not a public record. However, in an effort to provide a good faith response to your request, enclosed, please find the check registers of Florida's Great Northwest for 07, 08, and 09. In providing this information, Florida's Great Northwest is going well beyond what is required under Florida law, including providing records related to private entity members and federal grants which would not normally be subject of a Chapter 119 request. In doing so, Florida's Great Northwest does not waive any rights with respect to the production of non-public records in response to future requests. Now, obviously, this was written by half a dozen lawyers.
Yes.
I think one thing right out of the gate, and you were starting to allude to that, here's where I have a little difference of opinion with the Sunshine Law. I understand that standing in the shoes of government and if you take government money. Okay? Where I depart from that is I believe that any agency that is getting federal grants that are taxpayers' money should be transparent and accountable to the taxpayers, period, end of story. I don't care if you stand in the shoes of government. Especially when, and look, we've done the rough math here, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have every single dollar amount here. But somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.3 million grand total comes into this organization.
This was in 2007.
In 2007,
according to their IRS 990 form.
Right.
About 4.4 million.
Right.
Came in various kinds of revenue, and I'll just read. Direct public support was 144,000. Government contributions (parentheses grants) was 2.18 million.
Right.
And that's a total of 2.3 million. And then you add to that 2.3 million. You add to that program service revenue, including government fees and contracts, was another 1.4 million.
When you look at the private contributions that come into this,
well, let's qualify private as well.
Right.
Add to that now membership dues and assessments. They brought in 650,000 roughly.
Right.
But if you look at their membership list here, you see some private companies, but you also see colleges.
Right.
And you see economic development agencies, which are typically receive a big chunk of tax
dollars. What we're comfortable in saying today is that even if we give them credit for all of their private donations that they claim to be private, only 15% of their total revenue comes from their definition of private organizations.
We calculate between 15 and 20%.
Right. Now, as Deborah is saying, when Enterprise Florida makes a donation to this organization, that is not a private donation. When a college taking my children's tuition and playing politics with it, that is not a private donation.
But see, in many of those cases, when it goes through an economic development agency, it's a form of money laundering. In my personal opinion, it's a form of money laundering where you take a tax dollar and you give it to, say, Enterprise Florida, who's a public-private nonprofit. Then they take your tax dollar and hand it over to Florida's Great Northwest. All of a sudden, that's a private contribution.
It's like somehow money magically changes forms.
Right.
Today, at the start of the legislature, it is your tax dollars.
Right.
Tomorrow, it is $27 million that goes to Enterprise Florida.
Right.
Shortly thereafter, it turns into German money or Spanish money or something that doesn't get accounted for in our economic system
Well,
anymore.
they don't even have to do that. They just have to write an Enterprise Florida check to Florida's Great Northwest, and that's
Right.
now considered a private, according to them, considered a private contribution.
And we saw the same thing with Team Santa Rosa, so we're not new to this argument, ladies and gentlemen. Since Florida's Great Northwest has asked for an opinion on this, it is going to be my personal goal that we're going to go through all these entities, and every one of them that they're claiming is a private contribution that we believe is public. We're going to have a conversation with the IRS over that, because these are, federal
Right.
documents that are supposed to be, the IRS gets after you folks all the time. And I think it's only fair that we're honest and upfront. And let me say this. I do know a couple people that's in Florida's Great Northwest. This is not a personal issue with them. It's not a vendetta. It's not, you've made me mad, so I'm going to do something. I'm going to raise a lot of noise about it. My sole purpose, and Deborah, I know your purpose is the same: transparency and accountability for the taxpayers' dollars.
And I think that people need to understand fully what you've got here is you've got this dense network now of quote-unquote public-private economic development agencies who are taking in mass amounts of tax money.
Millions.
And they're deciding who to shovel it out to. I don't know. Here's a brief list of where some of the money went.
Right.
And there are no names in here. This is just categories of I guess programs they've got going where they hand checks to people.
Right.
Strategic program development. The recipient's name is listed as various.
Right.
$256,000.
Nice.
Who got that? Outreach program, $91,000. Customized job training grants, $33,000. Entrepreneurship grants, $237,000. Secondary education grants, $466,000.
Wow. And look.
And that's our money.
I'm not saying our whole point of discussion here is not if they're doing bad things or doing good things. The point of discussion is the lack of transparency to the taxpayers. They've stated their opinion. They're going to Senator Gates and I believe one other senator has quote unquote asked the Attorney General for an opinion. Let me assure you that I will be sending my comments to the Attorney General regarding this, and hopefully we get the right answer.
Well, and above and beyond that, if it's the wrong answer, let's not forget that it's elected officials who funnel this money to this organization.
Right.
At some point, people need to pay attention to where these elected officials are funneling all this money.
Right, and look, one thing you need to keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Helms is the chairman of this organization. So you have kind of the same, it's
the same people that circulate through
Right.
through these different agencies. Absolutely, that's true. And let's keep this in mind as well. Just in the interest of keeping things open and transparent, theoretically, you could have Commissioner X hands $100,000 to Florida's Great Northwest, who then hands $50,000 to Company X, who then turns around and contributes X amount of dollars to
Commissioner X who gave it start out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
there's all kind of
It's a clear path that's available.
the other interesting thing, and I want to read this again, and this is again the letter that I received from Florida's Great Northwest. Florida Great Northwest is a private, not-for-profit organization which derives the preponderance of its membership revenue from private organizations.
Right, and we just went through that. The membership revenue in 2007 was $650,000 out of $4.4 million.
Now, get your arms around that, ladies and gentlemen. The preponderance of their private donations come from private organizations.
Of their membership revenue.
Of their membership. Well, that's how it should be. But that's not the preponderance of everything they collect.
Right.